Have you ever felt like your emotions were a storm you couldn't control? One moment, you're steady, and the next, you're swept away by frustration, anxiety, or anger, reacting instead of responding, feeling powerless against the chaos inside. Now picture this, a state of unshakable calm, where no matter what life throws at you, you meet it with clarity, strength, and purpose. That's the promise of Stoicism, an ancient philosophy that teaches us how to transform emotional turbulence into steady, deliberate power. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, put it perfectly: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Those words aren't just inspiration, they're a blueprint for mastering your inner world. This video is about that journey from emotional chaos to calm power. It's about understanding why we react the way we do and how Stoic principles can help us rewrite those instincts. Think of it as a mental toolkit, one that doesn't suppress emotions but teaches us to navigate them with wisdom. We'll explore self-awareness, the ability to step back and observe our reactions without being ruled by them. We'll talk about acceptance, not as resignation, but as the clarity to see what we can change and what we must let go. And most importantly, we'll cover disciplined action, the practice of aligning our responses with our values, even when everything inside us wants to spiral. This isn't about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming unstoppable. Imagine facing setbacks without crumbling, handling criticism without defensiveness, or making decisions without being clouded by fear. That's the Stoic Awakening, a shift from being at the mercy of your emotions to wielding them with intention. Whether you're struggling with stress, uncertainty, or just the daily friction of life, what you're about to learn can change how you experience everything. So let's begin. The path from chaos to calm starts here. Emotional chaos isn't just fleeting stress, it's that overwhelming swirl of frustration, worry, and impulsivity that hijacks your clarity. It's snapping at a coworker over a minor mistake, lying awake replaying an argument, or feeling paralyzed by indecision because fear shouts louder than reason. The Stoics saw this turmoil not as inevitable, but as a sign we've lost sight of what's truly within our control. Seneca, the philosopher who counseled emperors, called these emotional storms voluntary slavery, because every time we let anger or anxiety dictate our actions, we hand over our freedom. Think about the last time you felt emotionally derailed. Maybe it was a traffic jam that ruined your morning, a harsh comment that lingered for days, or the suffocating pressure of too many demands at once. These moments reveal a pattern. We often treat external events like they have the authority to dictate our inner state. Stoicism flips that script. It asks, what if the chaos isn't in the situation, but in how we're interpreting it? A delayed train isn't inherently infuriating, it's our insistence that the world should conform to our schedule that breeds the frustration. This philosophy doesn't dismiss emotions as weakness. Instead, it teaches us to interrogate them. When anxiety claws at you before a big presentation, Stoicism wouldn't say, ignore it. It would ask, what story are you telling yourself? Is it, I'll fail, or my worth is on the line? Those narratives, not the event itself, are the real source of the storm. Seneca wrote letters urging his friends to separate yourself from the mere physical event and examine the judgments fueling their distress. Consider workplace tension. Two people receive the same critical feedback. One spirals into self-doubt, the other sees it as a chance to improve. The difference isn't the feedback, it's what each person believes criticism means about them. Stoicism shines a light on that space between event and reaction, where our power actually lies. It's not about suppressing feelings, it's about recognizing that emotions are messengers, not masters. So where does your chaos usually erupt? Is it in relationships where expectations clash, or in uncertainty when life feels like a series of unanswered questions? Those pain points aren't flaws, they're invitations to practice what the Stoics called prosoph, the art of attention. Before reacting, pause, ask, is this event within my control? If not, what part of my response is? This simple shift from helplessness to agency is where the path to calm begins. The moment something happens, a rude comment, a missed deadline, a sudden change of plans, our minds don't just register the event. They instantly layer it with meaning, spinning stories about what it means and why it matters. The Stoics called this fundamental distinction the difference between impressions, the raw facts of a situation, and judgments, the interpretations we attach to them. Epictetus, the philosopher born into slavery, put it bluntly: what upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about things. That traffic jam isn't the problem. It's your belief that the universe owes you a smooth commute. The criticism isn't the wound, it's your conviction that it diminishes your worth. Think about social media outrage. Two people read the same controversial post. One scrolls past unfazed, the other fumes for hours, drafting angry replies. The post itself is neutral, or just pixels on a screen. What ignites the emotion is the second person's judgment. This is an attack on my values, or how dare they be so ignorant. Stoicism doesn't tell us to stop feeling. It teaches us to interrogate why we feel what we feel. When you react to a notification with a spike of anger, ask, is this emotion coming from the screen or from the story I'm telling myself about what it represents? This is where reactive and reflective responses diverge. Reactive mode is like a puppet, jerked around by every string of emotion. You see a text from your boss saying, "We need to talk," and instantly assume the worst. Your stomach drops, your pulse races. Reflective mode presses pause. It acknowledges the fear but then asks, what do I actually know right now? Maybe the talk is about a promotion. Maybe it's a routine check-in. The uncertainty feels uncomfortable, but discomfort isn't danger. The Stoics practiced this daily, writing down their automatic judgments and then dissecting them like scientists. Marcus Aurelius filled his journal with reminders like, don't let the force of an impression sweep you off your feet. Say to it, hold on, let me see who you are and what you represent. Here's a challenge. Recall a moment this week when you felt a sudden surge of emotion, irritation, envy, defensiveness. Now strip away the judgment. If someone cut you off in traffic, the impression is, a car changed lanes abruptly. The judgment might be, that jerk disrespected me. But what if the driver was panicking to reach a hospital? What if they simply didn't see you? The event hasn't changed, but your emotional response shifts when you question the narrative. This isn't about making excuses for others, it's about reclaiming your peace. Epictetus trained his students to respond to insults with humor or curiosity, not rage. When someone called him a name, he'd reply, "You must know me better than I do. What else am I missing?" By refusing to accept the judgment behind the insult, he drained it of power. Try this next time emotion flares. Pause and label the impression. My partner forgot to call, separately from the judgment. They don't care about me. That space between them, that's where your freedom lies. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a simple but radical idea. Some things are within our power and some things are not. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's greatest teachers, framed it as the dichotomy of control, a mental dividing line that separates what belongs to us from what doesn't. On one side, our judgments, intentions, and actions. On the other, everything else: the weather, the past, other people's choices, even our own bodies as they age. The suffering we experience, it almost always comes from blurring that line, from exhausting ourselves trying to command the uncontrollable while neglecting the sovereignty we actually hold. Picture yourself stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. Your hands grip the wheel, your jaw tightens as if your frustration could magically clear the road. But here's the truth: the traffic jam is beyond your control. Your reaction, that's yours alone. The Stoics wouldn't tell you to enjoy the gridlock. They'd ask why you've handed your mood over to it. Every minute spent fuming is a minute spent serving something that doesn't answer to you. This principle isn't about passive acceptance, it's about strategic focus. Imagine two athletes preparing for a championship game. One obsesses over the referees, the weather, the noise of the crowd. The other zeroes in on their training, their mindset, their adaptability. Who's more likely to perform well? The Stoics argue that most of life follows this same pattern. We can't control market crashes, but we can control how we prepare financially. We can't force others to be kind, but we can choose our own compassion. The moment we stop wrestling with the immovable objects of life and start directing our energy toward what we can influence, everything changes. Try this: grab a sheet of paper and draw two columns. Label one within my control, the other not within my control. Now list your current worries. A strained relationship, the other person's attitude goes on the right. Your own honesty and patience, that's yours left side. A looming deadline, the unexpected delays go right. Your focus and effort go left. This exercise isn't just theoretical, it's a power reclamation. Each time you move an item to the uncontrollable column, you're not giving up. You're freeing yourself from a battle you were never meant to fight. Epictetus warned his students, "Demand not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go on well." That's the awakening, realizing that calm isn't found in rearranging the world to suit us, but in mastering our inner world to meet whatever comes. The traffic jam will end, the criticism will fade. The real question is, who do you want to be while you wait? What if the very things we resist, the setbacks, the unexpected turns, the so-called misfortunes, were actually the raw materials for our growth? That's the heart of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. While Nietzsche famously embraced this idea, its roots run deep in Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself like this: "The obstacle becomes the way." Turn every hindrance into fuel. He wasn't just preaching resilience, he was mapping a mindset that transforms adversity into advantage. Picture two people facing the same career setback, a promotion denied. One rages against the unfairness, obsessing over what they've lost. The other asks, what does this make possible? Maybe it's a chance to build skills elsewhere, or a sign to pivot toward work that truly aligns with their values. The event is identical, but the second response embodies Amor Fati, not just enduring what happens, but embracing it as necessary, even valuable. The Stoics didn't see fate as a cruel master, but as a teacher. When a storm sinks a ship, the sailor can curse the wind or learn to navigate better. Both face the same waves, but only one grows stronger. Health struggles test this philosophy deeply. Imagine receiving a difficult diagnosis. The instinct is to scream, "Why me?" But Stoicism whispers a different question. What now? Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor inspired by Stoic thought, wrote that while we can't always control our circumstances, we can always choose our response. He called this the last of human freedoms. A patient who views illness as an enemy fights alone. One who sees it as a harsh but meaningful teacher, however painful, finds purpose in the fight. Here's the practice. Take a current challenge, a strained relationship, a financial pinch, a missed opportunity. Write it down, then complete this sentence. This is happening for me because not as empty optimism, but as an excavation for hidden strength. A rejection letter might reveal your true passion lies elsewhere. A betrayal could teach you boundaries. Even grief, as unbearable as it is, carves depths in us where compassion later flows. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire plagued by war and plague, yet his journal radiates acceptance. Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. That's not resignation, it's recognition that life's friction polishes us. Nietzsche took it further. My formula for greatness is Ammer fati, not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it. Try this today. When frustration arises, pause and say aloud, "This too belongs." Watch how the weight shifts from adversary to ally. We spend so much of our lives chasing more money, better relationships, the next promotion, the perfect body. But what if the secret to peace wasn't in getting more, but in wanting differently? The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, and it has nothing to do with suppressing wants. Instead, it's about redirecting them away from things that leave us restless toward what actually nourishes our character. Seneca put it bluntly in one of his letters. Until we have begun to go without, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. That's the heart of it. Desire isn't the enemy, but misplaced desire is a recipe for endless dissatisfaction. Take modern consumerism. Every ad whispers the same lie. You'll be happy when you buy the car, wear the clothes, upgrade the phone. But the thrill fades fast, doesn't it? The Stoics saw this cycle 2,000 years ago. Seneca observed how luxury doesn't satisfy, it inflames. The more we have, the more we crave, like drinking salt water to quench thirst. Contrast that with contentment, which isn't about having little, but about needing little. When your sense of worth isn't tied to possessions or status, you're free. Not because you've given up on life, but because you've upgraded what you value. Imagine two people stuck in airport delays. One fumes at the airline, scrolling through social media, comparing their life to others. The other opens a book, calls a friend, or simply watches the chaos with curiosity. Same situation, radically different experiences. Why? The first person's desires are chained to externals. This shouldn't be happening. I deserve better. The second has aligned their wants with what's already within their control. Patience, curiosity, presence. That's Stoic desire in action, not less passion, but passion aimed wisely. Here's a question to sit with. What do I truly need to be at peace? Not the fantasy checklist society sold you, but the bare essentials. Maybe it's integrity in your actions. Maybe it's moments of quiet or relationships built on honesty. The Stoics would argue that everything beyond that is extra, nice to have, but not necessary for a life well lived. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, very little is needed to make a happy life. Not nothing, but very little. That's the shift from craving what glitters to cherishing what grounds you. Try this today. Notice when desire feels like hunger versus when it feels like habit. That impulse to check your phone, buy the new gadget, or obsess over someone's opinion. Ask, is this serving my growth or just feeding a restlessness I've mistaken for ambition? The discipline of desire isn't about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to the right things, the ones that leave you fuller, not emptier. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Your richest life might just begin when you stop chasing what never satisfies and start wanting what already sustains you. What if the key to peace wasn't ignoring life's uncertainties, but staring straight at them? The Stoics called this Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils, and it's one of their most misunderstood practices. This isn't about pessimism or dwelling on the worst, it's about mental inoculation. Seneca wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Imagine standing in your home, picturing it stripped bare, no furniture, no comforts. For a moment you feel the loss, then you open your eyes. The couch is still there, the books on the shelf, the warmth of the room. Suddenly, what was ordinary feels like abundance. That's the alchemy of negative visualization, not to fear loss, but to dissolve its grip by confronting it willingly. Think about job insecurity. The modern world thrives on instability, layoffs, industry shifts, unexpected setbacks. Most people respond by clinging tighter to what they have, living in quiet dread of the email that could upend everything. The Stoic approach: sit down and ask, what if it happens? Not to spiral into anxiety, but to map the path forward. You'd update your resume, tap your network, maybe explore side skills. The fear loses its fangs because you've already walked through the scenario and realized you'd adapt. The same applies to relationships. Visualizing a breakup or conflict doesn't doom it. It prepares you to cherish the present while recognizing that love, like all things, is impermanent. Here's how to practice this today. Close your eyes and pick one thing you often take for granted: your health, a steady paycheck, a loved one's presence. Now imagine it's gone. Sit with that hollow feeling for 10 seconds, then return. Notice how your breath slows, how your shoulders drop. The gratitude isn't forced, it's automatic because you've momentarily touched the void and returned. Seneca advised his friends to do this daily, writing, "Set aside a certain number of days to eat only the plainest food where the courses close. Then you'll understand. It's not happiness that makes us grateful, but gratefulness that makes us happy." The modern twist: we don't just visualize loss, we rehearse resilience. If your phone broke today, could you recall important numbers without it? If a storm knocked out power, would you know how to fill the hours without screens? These aren't fears, they're drills. Like a firefighter training for flames, you're strengthening your calm by walking through hypotheticals. The Stoics knew this. Security isn't the absence of danger, but the presence of preparedness. So next time you hug someone, let it linger a second longer. Taste your coffee like it might be your last cup. Not because it will be, but because remembering it could be is what makes it sacred. Between what happens to us and how we respond lies a space, sometimes just a breath, sometimes longer, where our power lives. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, called this the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose our response. His insight was deeply Stoic. Long before Frankl, Epictetus taught that while we can't control external events, we can control the gap between them and our reactions. That pause is where freedom is won or lost. Consider road rage. A car cuts you off, your body tenses, your pulse spikes. The instinct is to honk, yell, or worse. But in that sliver of time between the other driver's action and your own, there's a choice. The Stoic question isn't, how dare they, but what will this reaction cost me? That surge of anger feels justified in the moment, but it's you who pays the price, with your peace, your focus, even your safety. Epictetus trained his students to see insults like objects thrown at them. You can't stop someone from hurling a rock, but you can decide whether to catch it or let it fall. Criticism stings the same way. When someone dismisses your work or mocks your effort, the immediate reaction might be defensiveness or self-doubt. But what if in that pause you asked, is there truth here I can use? Or is this just noise? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." Not all feedback deserves a throne in your mind. The pause lets you discern. Here's the practice. Pick one routine trigger today: a coworker's annoying habit, a child's tantrum, a slow internet connection. When it happens, don't react, breathe, count to 3. In that pause, you'll find something extraordinary, the realization that you're not a puppet to your impulses. You're the one holding the strings. Frankel's time in the camps taught him that even in the most brutal circumstances, people could choose their attitude. If that's true there, imagine what it means for your daily irritations. The pause isn't passive. It's where you shift from reactor to architect. Seneca described anger as brief insanity, and its antidote is this simple delay. Try it now. Clench your fist tightly for 5 seconds, then release. Notice how the tension dissolves. Emotions work the same way. When you interrupt their momentum, they lose their grip. So where will you insert your pause today? In the email that makes your blood boil, the news headline designed to outrage, that pause is your sovereignty. Guard it fiercely. Marcus Aurelius never intended for his private writings to become one of history's most profound works of philosophy. His meditations were simply pages filled by candlelight, a Roman emperor wrestling with his own humanity, questioning his reactions, and reminding himself of the principles that anchored him. That's the power of Stoic journaling. It's not about crafting perfect prose, but about creating a dialogue with your deepest self. Think of it as a mental gym where you strengthen clarity and emotional resilience, one honest sentence at a time. Start with this prompt straight from Marcus' playbook. What virtue did I practice today? Not what did I achieve, or what went wrong, but where did I choose courage, patience, or wisdom? Maybe you held your tongue during a heated debate, or chose kindness when exhaustion made it hard. These small victories often go unnoticed, but writing them down rewires your focus from external validation to internal growth. The Stoics called this prosoph, the art of attentive self-reflection. It's not self-criticism, it's recognizing the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. Another prompt to try: what emotion ruled me today and why? When frustration flared during your commute, was it really the traffic or the story you told yourself about wasted time? When anxiety crept in before a meeting, did you examine the fear behind it, or just let it hijack your focus? Seneca wrote letters dissecting his daily emotional triggers, not to dwell on them, but to disarm their power. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, he noted. Journaling shines a light on that gap between reality and the stories we spin. Here's a challenge: for 1 week, carve out 10 minutes each night. No grand declarations, no pressure. Just answer these 3 questions. What did I try to control today that wasn't mine to command? Where did I confuse judgment with fact? What's one small way I can align tomorrow's actions with my values? This isn't about fixing yourself, it's about meeting yourself with curiosity. Like Marcus, you might find that the act of writing steadies you, the chaos of the day settles. The path forward clarifies, and over time, those pages become a map of your awakening, not to perfection, but to presence. Long before mindfulness became a buzzword, the Stoics were practicing a powerful form of focused attention they called prosophe, a vigilant awareness of the present moment and the judgments coloring it. Picture this: you're walking to work, but your mind is replaying yesterday's argument, drafting tomorrow's to-do list, or worrying about next month's bills. Prosophe is the art of stepping into that mental whirlwind and saying, "No, right now I am here. Right now I choose where my attention goes." Epictetus put it bluntly: the first and greatest task of the philosopher is to test appearances and distinguish them. In modern terms, don't believe every thought that hijacks your focus. This ancient practice has striking parallels with contemporary mindfulness, but with a crucial difference. Modern mindfulness often emphasizes observing thoughts without judgment, like clouds passing in the sky. Stoic prosophe takes it further. It's not just noticing the clouds, but questioning whether they're storm warnings or mere illusions. When anxiety whispers, this presentation will be a disaster, mindfulness might say, I notice I'm feeling anxious. Procesche adds, is this anxiety based on facts or fears? What evidence do I have? What's within my control to prepare? It's mindfulness with a backbone. Try this today. Pick an anchor. Something mundane you do daily, like washing dishes or walking to your car. For those 2 minutes, engage in what the Stoics called senses-wide attention. Feel the water's temperature. Notice the weight of the mug in your hand. Hear the clink of plates. When your mind wanders to a stressful email or a future worry, and it will gently guide it back, this isn't about emptying your mind. It's about training it to return to the present, like a muscle strengthening with each repetition. The Stoics believed this was the foundation of wisdom, mastering where your attention lives moment to moment. Epictetus warned his students, you are not your impressions, but the hand that grasps or releases them. Next time you're stuck in a waiting room or a slow line, resist the urge to pull out your phone. Instead, practice procesche. Observe the room's sounds, the weight of your body in the chair, the rhythm of your breath. That space between stimulus and reaction, that's where your power grows. The more you exercise this attention, the more you'll catch emotional reactions before they spiral, transforming mindfulness from a meditation cushion practice into a way of moving through the world. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a line in his private journal that would echo through centuries. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, it sounds like a paradox. How can a roadblock also be the path? But this is the essence of Stoic alchemy, transforming barriers into stepping stones. Consider Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who faced exile, political betrayal, and ultimately death by his own hand rather than submit to tyranny. His enemies thought crushing him would erase his influence. Instead, his defiance became legend, inspiring generations to resist oppression. The Stoics didn't see obstacles as accidents. They saw them as the curriculum of life. Take modern rejection, a job application ignored, a manuscript declined. The instinct is to wilt or lash out. But what if that no is redirecting you towards something better suited to your strengths? J.K. Rowling's early rejections forced her to refine Harry Potter until it resonated globally. The impediment of those closed doors wasn't failure. It was the pressure needed to polish her work to brilliance. Or think of athletes who suffer career-ending injuries only to discover coaching or advocacy, their limitation revealing a purpose they'd never have found otherwise. The obstacle didn't block their path, it carved a new one. Here's how to practice this when you hit a setback, a financial loss, a broken relationship, a missed opportunity. Ask 2 questions. First, what can this teach me about my blind spots? Maybe the failed project exposed poor time management, or the rejection revealed a need to communicate more clearly. Second, what does this free me to pursue? When one door slams, you're no longer distracted by what's behind it. A startup founder whose product flopped might realize, now I can pivot to what truly excites me. The obstacle isn't just a lesson, it's liberation in disguise. Marcus didn't write those words on a peaceful retreat. He ruled during plague, war, and betrayal, yet his journal reflects relentless focus on what he could control, his perspective. That's the Stoic shift, not why is this happening to me, but how can I use this? Your current challenge, whether it's a health scare or a creative block, isn't a detour. It's the terrain you were meant to cross. The weightlifter builds strength by resisting gravity. The sailor learns navigation by facing storms. Your obstacles aren't opposing you, they're shaping you. So next time you meet resistance, hear Marcus whisper, this is the way. Modern society measures success in flashing neon lights, job titles, bank balances, follower counts. But the Stoics whispered a radical counterpoint 2,000 years ago. None of that matters if your character is weak. Musonius Rufus, the philosopher who taught Epictetus, put it bluntly: virtue is not simply theoretical knowledge, it is the art of living well in every circumstance. Not wealth, not fame, not comfort, just four qualities: wisdom to see truth, courage to act on it, justice to guide your interactions, and temperance to master your desires. These aren't abstract ideals, they're daily choices that outlast any external reward. Consider two co-workers up for the same promotion. One cuts corners, takes credit for others' work, and stays late just for show. The other collaborates openly, admits mistakes, and leaves on time to honor family commitments. Who wins depends on the metric. The Stoics would argue that even if the first gets the title, the second has already won because their actions align with an unshakable inner compass. When Seneca described virtue as the sole good, he wasn't dismissing practical needs. He was reminding us that no amount of external success can compensate for a corroded conscience. This flips modern hustle culture on its head. Society tells you to grind until you collapse, sacrifice integrity for profit, or tolerate toxic environments for prestige. Stoicism asks, at what cost? A high-powered job that erodes your health isn't success, it's a bad trade. A relationship that demands you silence your values isn't love, it's bondage. The ancient Stoics, from slave Epictetus to Emperor Marcus Aurelius, agreed, your true worth is measured by what you are, not what you have. So here's the challenge. Grab a sheet of paper or open your notes app and draw two columns. Label the first society's scorecard. List what your culture rewards, maybe wealth, beauty, likes, or speed. Now label the second column Stoic virtues. For each item in the first list, ask, does pursuing this strengthen my wisdom, courage, justice, or temperance? That viral trend telling you to work 90-hour weeks, does it cultivate courage or exploit fear? That influencer flapping luxury bags, does that reflect temperance or indulgence? The gap between the columns reveals where you've been outsourcing your self-worth. Musonius Rufus taught that virtue isn't just for philosophers, it's for farmers, parents, and artisans. A just plumber who fixes leaks fairly is more stoic than a corrupt senator. A cashier who handles rude customers with patience practices more courage than a soldier following unjust orders. The test isn't your role, but how you fill it. Tonight, reflect. When did you last choose integrity over convenience? When did fear stop you from speaking a necessary truth? Those moments, not your resume, are the real ledger of your life. One of the greatest misunderstandings about Stoicism is that it teaches emotional coldness, that to be Stoic means to shut off your heart, to stand unmoved as the world suffers around you. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Stoics weren't advocates of indifference, they were masters of wise engagement. Think of it like this. A doctor in an emergency room doesn't burst into tears at every patient's pain, not because they don't care, but because they've learned to channel their compassion into effective action. That's the Stoic balance, caring deeply but not carelessly. Take Hierocles, the Stoic philosopher who imagined human connection as a series of concentric circles. At the center, you, the next ring, family, then friends, community, strangers, and finally, all of humanity. His lesson: we're wired to care most for those closest to us, but Stoic practice involves consciously drawing those outer circles inward, recognizing that the stranger's suffering is as real as your own, even if you don't feel it as sharply. This isn't about forcing yourself to cry over every tragedy on the news. It's about expanding your sense of responsibility without collapsing under its weight. Modern life bombards us with endless causes to care about: global crises, local injustices, personal struggles. It's no wonder so many people swing between burnout and numbness. The Stoic antidote, compassionate detachment. Picture a social worker who listens intently to a client's trauma, offers practical help, then goes home and sleeps soundly. They're not uncaring, they've simply learned to separate empathy from enmeshment. They feel, but they don't drown. Seneca wrote letters comforting grieving friends, not with empty platitudes, but with reminders that sorrow shouldn't erase the ability to act. Does your grief help the departed? He'd ask. If not, what serves life better? Here's the practice. Next time you're overwhelmed by someone's pain, a friend's divorce, a headline about war, pause. Ask, what part of this can I actually influence? Maybe it's lending an ear, donating time, or simply bearing witness without spiraling into despair. The rest. Acknowledge it, but don't adopt it as your personal burden. Epictetus advised, if you see someone weeping in grief, let your sympathy arise in your heart, but don't let your inner harmony be broken. That's the key. You can hold space for others without handing them the keys to your peace. This isn't selfishness, it's sustainability. You can't pour from an empty cup, and the world doesn't benefit when you're drained. The Stoics knew that true compassion isn't measured by how much you suffer with others, but by how clearly you can see how to help, and then act. So when empathy fatigue whispers, you have to feel it all, reply, no. I have to do what matters. That's Stoic love, not less feeling, but more purposeful action. Marcus Aurelius had a secret weapon against life's petty frustrations, a mental exercise so simple yet profound that it could dissolve anger, shrink worries, and rewire perspective in minutes. He called it the view from above. Picture yourself floating high above the earth, watching your city shrink to the size of a postage stamp, your country becoming a mere outline, the planet itself just a pale blue dot in the vast cosmos. From this vantage point, how significant is that rude comment from your coworker, that missed deadline, that argument you've been replaying in your head for days? The Stoic emperor would remind himself, think of the substance of the whole, think of the infinite span of time. In that context, how much does this one moment truly matter? This isn't about dismissing your struggles as trivial, it's about recognizing their true scale. Take climate change. When you're stuck in the daily grind, it's easy to feel helpless or overwhelmed by headlines. But zoom out. Humanity has faced existential challenges before plagues, wars, ice ages, and adapted. This doesn't negate the urgency of action, but it reframes panic into purposeful focus. Or consider a personal grudge. Up close, it feels like a wound that defines you. Viewed from the perspective of your 80-year-old self, it might be a barely remembered blip. The view from above isn't escapism, it's emotional recalibration. Here's how to practice it. Once a week, carve out 5 minutes. Close your eyes and imagine you're a satellite looking down at your life. See your routines, your conflicts, your ambitions as tiny specks in the grand tapestry. Then ask, what will this thing I'm stressing about look like in 5 years? In 50, the neighbor's loud music isn't a personal attack, it's a fleeting sound wave in the neighborhood's history. That career setback isn't a dead end, it's a single brushstroke in the mural of your professional journey. Marcus didn't use this exercise to avoid his responsibilities as emperor, he used it to prioritize them. When you see the bigger picture, you stop sweating the small stuff and gain clarity on what truly deserves your energy. Try this tonight. Write down your top 3 current worries. Now mentally fast forward to the end of your life. Would these still be the moments you'd remember, the ones you'd regret not savoring? Or would they fade into the background, overshadowed by the relationships you nurtured and the values you lived by? The view from above is a mirror. It shows you what you're magnifying unnecessarily and what you might be taking for granted. As Marcus scribbled in his journal, how quickly all things vanish. their bodies into the universe, their memories into time. That's not nihilism, it's liberation. When you stop treating temporary storms as permanent climates, you free yourself to invest in what endures. History offers us rare individuals who didn't just study Stoic philosophy, they lived it under fire. Take Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who became a walking monument to integrity. When Julius Caesar marched on Rome, seizing power through bloodshed and bribery, Cato refused to bend. He stood before the Senate, ragged and unwashed, deliberately wearing the clothes of a beggar to shame those trading their principles for safety. His defiance wasn't performative, it was rooted in an unshakable truth. Some things are worth dying for, but nothing is worth compromising for. When Caesar offered him mercy, a calculated move to appear magnanimous, Cato chose suicide over submission, etching his final act as the ultimate rejection of tyranny. His contemporaries called it extreme, the Stoics called it consistency. Then there's Seneca, the philosopher-statesman who navigated the cutthroat court of Emperor Nero. Picture the challenge, advising a ruler who would later order his own mother's murder, all while maintaining his Stoic equilibrium. Seneca's letters reveal the tightrope he walked, dispensing wisdom to a tyrant, knowing each day might be his last. Yet instead of crumbling under the weight of that peril, he turned it into fuel. His writings on mortality weren't abstract musings, they were survival tools. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end, he wrote, a reminder that even exile which he endured or forced suicide which he faced couldn't strip him of his inner freedom. Now contrast their trials with modern struggles. No, you're not facing Caesar's legions or Nero's whims, but what about the co-worker undermining your reputation? The social media storm twisting your words, the relentless pressure to conform to values you don't respect. The scale differs, but the Stoic challenge remains identical: how to act with principle when the world rewards compromise. Cato's lesson isn't die for your beliefs, it's decide what's non-negotiable before the crisis hits. Seneca's legacy isn't about surviving a mad emperor, it's about crafting an inner citadel no external chaos can breach. Here's the practice: choose your Stoic exemplar. Maybe it's Epictetus, the slave who turned physical bondage into mental liberation. Maybe it's Portia Cato, who famously swallowed burning coals to join her husband Brutus in death rather than live under dictatorship. Or perhaps a modern figure like James Stockdale, the Navy pilot who credited Epictetus with helping him survive 7 years in a Vietnamese prison camp. Study their lives not as ancient history but as living blueprints. When faced with a moral dilemma, ask, what would Cato do when bribed? How would Seneca handle this slander? These aren't hypotheticals, they're mental rehearsals for your own moments of testing. The beauty of Stoic role models: they weren't saints, they were humans who chose discipline daily. Cato's stubbornness alienated allies. Seneca's wealth drew accusations of hypocrisy. Yet their imperfections make them more relatable, not less inspiring. The lesson isn't perfection, it's progression. So who's your North Star when the winds of chaos blow? Pick someone whose light helps you navigate the storm. Seneca called anger a brief madness, and he wasn't exaggerating. In his essay on anger, he dissects this emotion with the precision of a surgeon, revealing something startling. Anger isn't something that happens to us, it's something we permit. Think about the last time you snapped at someone. Maybe it was a partner forgetting an errand or a colleague taking credit for your idea. In that moment, anger probably felt like an automatic reaction, a fire lit without your consent. But Seneca argues there's always a hidden choice, a split second where you decide whether to fan the flames or let them die. Here's how it works in practice. Imagine you're hosting a family dinner and your sibling makes a snide comment about your cooking. Your face flushes, your chest tightens, classic anger signals. But right then, before the words fly, there's a gap. In that gap, you might tell yourself, they're disrespecting me on purpose, and boom, the anger surges. Or you could think they're stressed and lashing out, and suddenly the sting lessens. Seneca's insight: anger isn't born from the comment itself, but from your silent agreement with the story you attach to it. So how do we disrupt this cycle? Seneca offers two powerful tools. First, delay. When emotion flares, impose a mandatory pause, count to 10, leave the room, even just take a deep breath. This isn't about suppressing anger, it's about creating space to question its validity. Ancient Stoics would literally walk away from arguments, not out of weakness, but to reclaim their power to respond rather than react. Second, humor. When someone insults you, picture them wearing a clown nose. Absurd, exactly. Anger thrives on seriousness, on the belief that the offense matters. Humor undercuts that gravity. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius would imagine critics as chirping birds, annoying but harmless. Now, the deeper work, uncovering the expectation behind the anger. Every outburst is a betrayal of some hidden demand. People should treat me fairly. Plans should go smoothly. I deserve recognition. Stoicism teaches us to examine these silent contracts we've made with the universe. When your teenager rolls their eyes and you explode, ask, what rule did they just break in my mind? Maybe its children should always show respect. But here's the truth: the world doesn't owe you adherence to your unspoken rules. Recognizing this doesn't mean tolerating bad behavior. It means choosing your battles with clarity, not heat. Try this today. After your next moment of irritation, replay it like a detective. What precise thought crossed your mind right before the anger hit? Was it "this isn't fair" or "how dare they"? Those phrases are clues to your hidden expectations. Seneca's advice: the best remedy for anger is waiting, not so that it may subside, but so that we may see whether it was justified in the first place. Anger isn't your enemy, it's a teacher, revealing where you've tied your peace to things you can't control. Cut those ropes and you'll find fewer things worth raging about. The Stoics didn't just master their minds, they optimized their bodies for peak performance, starting with something we often neglect: sleep. While modern life treats rest as an afterthought, the ancients saw it as sacred fuel for virtue. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, was adamant. How can anyone expect to govern a city or command an army when they can't even govern their own bedtime? His students rose before dawn, not out of masochism, but because those quiet hours were when the mind was clearest, untouched by the chaos of the day. Compare that to today's scrolling until midnight, chasing dopamine hits while sabotaging tomorrow's focus. The difference isn't just discipline, it's recognizing that energy management is the foundation of everything else. Modern sleep science confirms what the Stoics intuited. Your bed isn't just for recovery, it's a launch pad for resilience. Blue light from screens delays melatonin, the hormone that cues sleep, while late meals hijack your digestion. The Stoics avoided these pitfalls with simple boundaries: no feasting after sunset, no stimulating debates before bed. Seneca wrote letters by lamplight, not the flicker of a tablet, winding down with reflection instead of reactivity. Their version of sleep hygiene wasn't about perfect routines, but about protecting the space between waking and resting. Think of it as a mental airlock, a transition from the noise of the world to the stillness where insight grows. Here's where ancient and modern wisdom collide. Research shows that consistent wake times anchor your circadian rhythm more than sleep duration. The Stoics didn't have sleep trackers, but they honored natural cycles: rising with the sun, working when light permitted, resting when it didn't. Compare that to the modern worker guzzling coffee at 3 p.m. to compensate for a ragged sleep schedule. The irony: Discipline feels restrictive until you experience the freedom it brings, the alertness of a mind unclouded by fatigue, the patience of a body running on full reserves. So start small. Pick one habit, whether it's shutting screens an hour early or writing tomorrow's priorities before bed, as Marcus Aurelius did in his journals. The goal isn't rigidity, it's noticing how tiny shifts create ripple effects. Miss your morning workout after a late night. That's not laziness, it's physics. Your willpower is a battery and sleep is the charger. The Stoics didn't glorify exhaustion as a badge of honor. They knew to wield calm power in daylight, you first need to surrender to the dark. Epictetus, the philosopher who began life as a slave, had a blunt warning for anyone chasing applause. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's not just humility, it's liberation. Imagine living untouched by others' opinions, not because you're indifferent to them, but because your self-worth isn't held hostage by their approval. The Stoics called this Adiafora, the art of labeling praise and criticism as indifferent, not because they don't matter at all, but because they don't define you. In a world where social media metrics dictate moods, where a post's likes can send us soaring or spiraling, this ancient practice isn't just philosophy, it's emotional armor. Consider the modern addiction to validation. You share a photo, then check your phone compulsively, waiting for the dopamine hit of notifications. A flood of hearts feels like affirmation, silence feels like rejection. But here's the Stoic reframe: both reactions are illusions. The praise isn't proof of your value, just as the lack of it isn't proof of failure. Epictetus trained his students to greet compliments and insults with the same detached curiosity. Thank you for your opinion, not you've decided my worth. When someone flatters you, ask, do their words reveal truth about me or just their own tastes? When they criticize, ask, is this feedback useful or just noise? The answer determines whether you absorb it or let it pass like weather. Try this exercise today. Grab a notebook and divide a page into 2 columns. On one side, list recent compliments you've received, from work achievements to casual remarks about your appearance. On the other, note criticisms, the offhand jab from a relative, the negative comment online. Now, in bold letters at the top, write, these are data points, not verdicts. The Stoics would argue that both columns are equally irrelevant to your core identity. The praise doesn't make you whole, the scorn doesn't make you broken. They're simply external events like rain or sunshine, to be noted but not internalized. Now, the deeper question: who would you be if no one was watching? Not the curated version for LinkedIn, not the performative self for parties, but the unfiltered, unobserved you. That's the person the Stoics urge you to cultivate, the one who acts from integrity, not image. Social media rewards personas, Stoicism rewards authenticity. When you post, pause. Am I sharing this to connect or to be admired? When you feel the itch to compare your life to someone's highlight reel, remember Seneca's jab at Roman elites. They live as if they're on stage, but who cares what the audience thinks when the play is meaningless? The freedom Epictetus promised isn't about rejecting community or feedback. It's about anchoring your self-assessment to something sturdier than fleeting opinions. Next time you feel the pull of validation, picture yourself holding a shield. Let useful feedback graze your skin. Let empty praise or baseless insults clatter to the ground. The less you need applause, the more you'll hear your own voice clear, unshaken, and finally your own. Every decision you make, from what to eat for breakfast to whether to quit your job, is a brick in the foundation of your character. The Stoics called this the discipline of action, and it's far more than just thinking before you act. It's about aligning every choice with an unshakable inner compass. Picture standing at a crossroads. One path promises wealth but compromises your honesty. The other offers less money but lets you sleep soundly. The Stoic question isn't what's easiest or what pays most, but which option makes me more virtuous. That shift from external rewards to internal integrity is where true power lies. Here's how to apply it. The Stoics used a three-filter test for decisions, a mental sieve to separate wisdom from impulse. First, does this action express virtue? Not just any virtue, but the one most needed in this moment. Facing a tough conversation, courage, managing a team, justice, resisting temptation, temperance. Second, what are the likely consequences, not just for me, but for others? Stoicism isn't selfish calculus. It's recognizing that your choices ripple outward. Third, and most piercing, is this authentic to who I aspire to be? Not who others expect you to be, but the person you're committed to becoming. Take a career crossroads, say, a job offer with a higher salary but a toxic culture. Filter 1. Does accepting align with courage, standing up for your well-being or justice, not supporting harmful systems? Filter 2. How will this affect your family's stability, your long-term mental health, or even the colleagues you'd leave behind? Filter 3. 5 years from now, will you admire the person who took this role or regret the compromise? The answer isn't always obvious, but the filters strip away the noise. Relationships test this even harder. Imagine discovering your partner lied about something small. Your reactive mind might scream, "They betrayed me," but the Stoic three-filter test pauses the drama. Virtue, would forgiveness express wisdom, or would overlooking this erode trust? Consequences, will calling it out deepen honesty or create resentment? Authenticity, does silent tolerance match the partner you want to be? Suddenly, the decision isn't about winning an argument, it's about crafting your character through the choice. Try this today. Pick one upcoming decision, whether to confront a friend, switch gyms, or even how to spend your evening. Run it through the three filters. Notice how clarity emerges when you stop asking, "What do I want?" and start asking, "Who do I want to become?" Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." That's the discipline of action, not perfection, but progression, one virtuous choice at a time. Gratitude in Stoicism isn't about saying, "Thank you," to get something in return or checking a positivity box. It's a radical act of presence, a way of anchoring yourself to what's already here instead of grasping for what isn't. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with a simple ritual, listing things he could easily take for granted: the warmth of sunlight, the ability to move his limbs, the people who tolerated his flaws. He didn't do this to manifest abundance or impress the gods. He did it to remind himself that life's most ordinary gifts are also its most fragile. When you arise in the morning, he wrote, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's the Stoic difference. Gratitude isn't a transaction. It's a lens that turns the mundane into the sacred. Modern gratitude practices often focus on accumulation, counting blessings like stacking coins. But Stoicism flips the script. It's not about how much you have, but how deeply you see what you already hold. Imagine two people at breakfast. One sighs over burnt toast, annoyed at the inconvenience. The other pauses, considering the chain of labor that brought the bread to their table: the farmer, the baker, the delivery driver. Both face the same toast, but the second person experiences a richer reality simply by paying attention. That's Stoic gratitude, recognizing that the world is already offering wonders if only we'd notice. Here's how to practice it. Try the Stoic gratitude triad, a three-part reflection drawn from Epictetus' teachings. First, health, not the absence of illness, but the miracle of your body functioning at all, your heart beating without permission, your lungs filling effortlessly. Second, relationships, not just the easy ones, but those that stretch your patience and humility, the people who have stayed despite your imperfections. Third, opportunities, not grand achievements, but the tiny freedoms, the book you can read, the walk you can take, the idea you're free to ponder. This triad isn't about ignoring life's hardships, it's about refusing to let them monopolize your focus. Assign yourself this daily drill. Each evening, light a candle or step outside whatever signals to your brain that this moment is different. Name one example from each category. A bodily function that worked today, health; a conversation that mattered, relationships; a small door that opened opportunities. The key is specificity. Instead of "I'm grateful for my partner," try "I'm grateful she laughed at my terrible joke this morning." The more concrete, the more it pierces the numbness of habit. Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius describing the sound of water in his villa's baths, the taste of coarse bread, details that grounded him in the tangible. This practice has a shadow side, though. Stoic gratitude isn't toxic positivity. It doesn't deny pain. When Marcus Aurelius journaled about his blessings, he was also battling chronic illness and leading a war. His gratitude wasn't a denial of suffering, it was a rope thrown across the chasm of despair. That's why this ritual works best when life feels heaviest. Lost your job, the triad reminds you. Your hands still function, your friend brought soup, the library offers free knowledge. The goal isn't to erase grief, but to widen your vision so grief doesn't erase everything else. Gratitude in this light becomes defiance. To thank the world for its fragile gifts while knowing they could vanish tomorrow isn't naive, it's courageous. The Stoics called this Ammer fati, loving fate, not because everything is good, but because even in the bad there's something to reclaim, your aching joints. They mean you're alive, the argument with your sibling, proof you still care enough to clash, the job rejection, a nudge toward a path you'd have missed. Try this today. When something irritates you, trace it backward to its hidden gift. The delayed train becomes forced stillness. The noisy neighbor becomes a test of patience. The Stoics didn't wait for perfection to be thankful. They mined imperfection for its lessons. That's the alchemy, not just counting blessings, but finding them where others see lack. There's a forgotten superpower hidden in plain sight, the ability to hold your tongue. The Stoics called it taciturnity, and it's not just about saying less. It's about reclaiming the space between impulse and expression, where real wisdom lives. Seneca warned, the more you say, the more likely you are to say something foolish. Imagine that every unnecessary word isn't just noise, it's a tiny surrender of your power. Fast forward to today, where we're drowning in digital chatter. Endless notifications, hot takes, and half-formed thoughts fired off in seconds. The Stoic art of silence isn't about becoming a recluse. It's about choosing to speak only when your words carry weight. Think about the last time you regretted hitting send. Maybe it was a snarky text, a reactive email, or a social media comment that spiraled into conflict. Now, contrast that with a moment you paused, when you let the anger simmer down, the joke sit unshared, the opinion go unvoiced. That restraint, that Stoic taciturnity in action. Seneca compared careless speech to pouring water into a leaking vessel. No matter how much you add, it never fills. The same goes for our modern feed. Scrolling, reacting, and adding to the noise rarely leaves us fuller. It just drains our focus. Here's the challenge. Try one day of intentional silence, not just verbal, but digital. No reactive tweets, no filler small talk, no venting texts. Instead, observe. Notice how often you reach for your phone to fill a quiet moment, or how quickly discomfort pushes you to speak. The Stoics weren't against conversation, they were against compulsive communication. Epictetus taught, We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. Today, we've flipped that, broadcasting constantly, listening rarely. A day of silence recalibrates that balance, the payoff, clarity. When you stop scattering your words, you start hearing your own thoughts. Marcus Aurelius wrote his deepest insights not in speeches, but in the quiet of his journal. Your most potent ideas won't come while doom-scrolling. They'll emerge in the spaces between the noise. Digital silence isn't deprivation. It's the blank canvas where your best thinking unfolds. So start small. Next time you're about to speak or type, ask Seneca's question: is this necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? If it doesn't clear all 3 bars, let it pass. The world won't miss your hot take, but you might just regain something priceless: your attention, your peace, and the power of words that actually matter. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who shaped Epictetus' thinking, had a radical idea for ancient Rome. Physical fitness wasn't just for soldiers or athletes, it was philosophy in motion. He didn't preach marathon running or Spartan austerity. He insisted that caring for the body was inseparable from cultivating virtue. Picture a Roman senator sweating alongside his slaves in the training yard, not to flaunt strength, but to forge it, because a weak body, he argued, becomes a distraction to the mind. How can someone enslaved to lethargy or illness master their impulses? He'd ask. This wasn't about six-pack abs, it was about removing physical obstacles to moral clarity. Modern fitness culture often glorifies extremes, punishing workouts, restrictive diets, all-or-nothing discipline. Stoicism offers a wiser path. Think of your body as an instrument, not an ornament. The goal isn't to sculpt it for admiration, but to ensure it doesn't betray you when life demands endurance. A musician doesn't abuse their violin to make it shinier, they maintain it to play beautiful music. Similarly, exercise, whether walking, swimming, or lifting, isn't about punishment or vanity. It's about functional resilience. Can you carry groceries without strain? Play with your kids without exhaustion. Breathe deeply during stress. That's Stoic fitness, the body as a reliable ally to your purpose. Consider the parallels between physical and mental training. When you push through the last few reps of a challenging set, you're not just building muscle, you're rehearsing perseverance. The burn in your legs mirrors the discomfort of resisting temptation or staying calm under criticism. Musonius taught that physical labor, chopping wood, digging soil, wasn't beneath philosophers. It was preparation for hardship. Modern life has automated away most manual toil, but the principle remains: intentional discomfort inoculates against life's inevitable strains. A body accustomed to effort won't panic when effort is required. Here's the practice. Next time you exercise, shift your focus from calories burned or pounds lifted to the Stoic question: how does this movement serve my character? A morning jog becomes discipline in action. Yoga transforms into patience training. Even rest days teach discernment, listening to your body instead of ignoring its signals. The Stoics weren't ascetics, they sought balance. Marcus Aurelius, despite the burdens of empire, made time for wrestling and boxing, not to dominate others, but to master his own limitations. Musonius took it further. He saw the body as a classroom for ethics, sharing public baths with the poor, a lesson in humility, enduring cold weather without complaint. Training for adversity, every physical act from eating to sleeping carried moral weight. Try this today. Eat one meal with full attention, no screens, no rushing. Notice how mindfulness of the body spills into mindfulness of choices. Or take the stairs instead of the elevator, not to burn fat, but to reclaim agency over your comfort. The ultimate test, illness or injury. When your body fails, as all bodies do, Stoicism asks, What can this weakness teach me about strength? A bad back forces you to move thoughtfully. A fever slows you down to reflect. Even pain, as unwelcome as it is, becomes a drill sergeant for patience. The Stoic body isn't invincible, it's adaptable. As Musonius wrote, it's not the absence of infirmity that makes us strong, but how we meet it. That's the true fitness, not the body you display, but the character you build through it. Death meditation sounds morbid until you realize it's the ultimate life hack. The Stoics didn't whisper Memento Mori, remember you must die, to dwell on darkness but to ignite clarity. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "You act like mortals in all you fear and like immortals in all you desire." That's the paradox. We live as if we have unlimited time, then panic when we realize we don't. Modern life piles on distractions, endless scrolling, trivial errands, petty grievances that trick us into treating days like they're disposable. But what if you flipped the script? What if, instead of avoiding the thought of death, you let it sharpen your focus like a whetstone on a blade? Picture this: you wake up knowing today is your last. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but quietly certain. How would your priorities shift? That meeting you've been dreading might suddenly seem irrelevant. The grudges you've carried, too heavy to hold onto. The book you've been meaning to write, the conversation you've avoided, the sunset you've been too busy to watch. These would rocket to the top of your list. Seneca hammered this point. It's not that we have too little time, but that we waste so much of it. The practice isn't about obsessing over an end date. It's about deleting the imaginary later we keep banking on. Now contrast this with how we typically spend our hours. The average person will spend 11 years of their life staring at screens, most of it mindlessly. We postpone joy for hypothetical futures. I'll travel when I retire. I'll reconnect when things calm down, as if time is a renewable resource. The Stoics would call this delusional. Epictetus told his students, "You're an old man now, let's say, and still you procrastinate." 2,000 years later, nothing's changed. We're still deferring life while clinging to routines that leave us emptier than they found us. Here's how to practice Memento Mori without gloom. Each morning, place a small object in your pocket, a coin, a smooth stone. Let it be your physical reminder of impermanence. Every time you touch it, ask, is what I'm doing right now worthy of my finite time? Not in a grandiose way, but with honest calibration. That third hour replaying an argument in your head. Probably not. The 15 minutes laughing with your kid, absolutely. Marcus Aurelius kept a skull on his desk not to wallow, but to weigh his actions against the inevitability of running out of chances. The beauty of this practice, it doesn't demand dramatic gestures. You don't need to quit your job or sell your possessions. It's about micro-alignments, choosing presence over autopilot. When you're tempted to gossip, the reminder whispers, is this how you'd spend your last afternoon? When you're grinding through emails late at night, it prods, will this matter when you're out of time? Death meditation isn't about dying. It's about surgically removing the trivial to make room for what actually nourishes you. Seneca's letters reveal a man obsessed with time's theft. He calculated how much of his life had been stolen by obligations he didn't value, conversations that left no mark, worries that never materialized. His solution: treat time like a currency more precious than gold, because unlike money, you can't earn it back. The modern equivalent might be tracking your screen time, then realizing you've donated months of your life to apps designed to addict you. The Stoic ask is simple. If you wouldn't throw your wallet into the ocean, why are you tossing away your hours? Try this tonight. Before sleep, name 3 things you did today that felt alive, not productive, not impressive, but alive. Maybe it was the first sip of coffee savored slowly, a genuine apology you finally offered, or the way sunlight hit your desk in the afternoon. Then name one thing you did on autopilot, something that already feels like a blur. The gap between those lists is where Memento Mori does its work, gently steering you from sleepwalking toward wakefulness. The goal isn't to cram every moment with bucket list intensity, but to stop pretending you'll live forever. As Seneca wrote, life is long if you know how to use it. The clock's ticking, yes, but that's what makes the minutes sacred. Hierocles, the Stoic philosopher, left us a powerful mental model for relationships, one that feels startlingly relevant today. He imagined human connection as a series of concentric circles. At the center, you, the next ring, family, then friends, local community, society at large, and finally, all of humanity. Most of us instinctively pour energy into the inner circles while treating the outer ones as abstract or unimportant. But here's the radical Stoic twist. Wisdom lies in deliberately drawing those outer circles inward, recognizing that the stranger's pain is as real as your siblings, even if it doesn't tug your heartstrings as sharply. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly. What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee. Modern life tests this daily. Think about how algorithms cater to our biases, showing us only what confirms our worldview. Or how workplace dynamics often pit departments against each other in competition for resources. Even families fracture over politics or generational divides. The Stoic remedy isn't naive idealism, it's practical compassion. That coworker who always takes credit for team efforts, instead of stewing in resentment, consider what insecurity drives their behavior. The neighbor whose trash blows into your yard, rather than muttering about laziness, maybe they're juggling 3 jobs and a sick parent. This isn't about excusing harm. It's about recognizing that most people aren't villains, they're flawed humans acting from limited perspectives, just like you. Service is where this philosophy comes alive. The Stoics didn't just theorize about unity, they embodied it. Musonius Rufus taught that philosophy without communal action was like medicine never applied to wounds. Here's a challenge this week: perform one act of service that bridges your circles. Tutor a student outside your social class. Volunteer at a shelter where you'll meet people whose struggles differ from yours. Even something as simple as buying coffee for the office janitor, someone whose labor often goes unseen, can stretch your circle of concern. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his journal brims with reminders of shared fragility. We're all fellow passengers on the same planet. That's the Stoic paradox. The deeper you acknowledge your own mortality and flaws, the more tenderness you can extend to others battling theirs. Isolation might feel safer, but virtue thrives in connection, not perfect harmony, but the messy, courageous work of showing up anyway. So where will you redraw your circles today? Your phone pings with another notification, another demand for your attention, another tug at your focus. This isn't just distraction, it's a modern battleground for your peace. The Stoics never faced smartphones, but they understood the deeper struggle, the tyranny of endless demands. Seneca warned against the busyness of his time, people rushing to meetings, chasing gossip, filling their days with noise. Swap scrolls for screens, and his words sting with relevance. Men are tight-fisted with their money, yet wasteful with their time. The one thing it's right to be stingy with. Digital Stoicism isn't about rejecting technology. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over where your attention goes. Start with this radical audit. Track your screen time for a day, not to shame yourself, but to see where your hours are actually invested. You might discover that the apps you mindlessly open aren't just stealing minutes, they're fragmenting your capacity for deep thought. The Stoic remedy. Schedule disconnection, not as punishment but as preservation. Designate sacred hours where your phone stays in another room, or use grayscale mode to strip apps of their dopamine-triggering colors. Epictetus advised, if you want to improve, be content to seem clueless or uncool in the eyes of the crowd. In today's terms, let those unread notifications pile up. The world won't end if you reply later, but your clarity might flourish. Now the detox challenge. Try 24 hours without digital entertainment. No streaming, no social media, no games. At first, it feels like withdrawal, but sit with that discomfort. Notice how boredom, the very thing we flee, becomes fertile ground for creativity or conversation. Marcus Aurelius wrote his deepest insights in the quiet of camp during military campaigns, far from Rome's distractions. Your detox isn't about deprivation. It's about rediscovering what your mind can do when it's not constantly reacting. Mindful consumption is the next tier. Before opening an app, ask Seneca's question, is this serving my growth or just numbing me? Scrolling news feeds isn't inherently bad, but autopilot scrolling is. Treat your attention like a finite currency. Would you hand a stranger $10 every time they demanded it? Then why surrender your focus to every algorithm's whim? The Stoics practiced prosouch vigilant awareness of their mental state. Apply that to tech, pause mid-scroll and check, are you engaged or enslaved? The deeper shift. Redefine connection. Likes and comments are shadows of real belonging. The Stoics cultivated circles through letters and conversations that demanded presence. Try replacing one daily scroll with a handwritten note or a walk where your phone stays pocketed. Digital tools are meant to serve your life, not the other way around. As Seneca wrote, life's not lacking in time, we're lacking in intentionality. Your screen isn't the enemy, but every unchecked minute on it is a vote for who controls your mind. Cast that vote wisely. Money isn't evil or virtuous, it's indifferent. That's the Stoic paradox when it comes to wealth. Epictetus, born into slavery and later becoming one of history's most revered philosophers, framed it like this: wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't call money meaningless or condemn luxury. He simply pointed out that true financial freedom has little to do with the size of your bank account and everything to do with the size of your cravings. The moment you tie your peace to a number, you've handed control to something outside yourself, and that's where the suffering begins. Modern life bombards us with a dangerous illusion that more money equals more happiness. But study after study reveals the opposite. Once basic needs are met, additional wealth does shockingly little to improve well-being. The Stoics saw this 2,000 years before behavioral economics existed. They called it proaisis, the power to choose what we value. A billionaire agonizing over stock dips is no freer than a peasant obsessing over crop yields. Both are enslaved to externals. The real question isn't how much do I have, but how much do I let it have me? Lifestyle inflation is the ultimate test of this principle. Think about your first paycheck, how thrilling it felt to cover rent or buy groceries without stress. Fast forward a few years, that same amount now feels paltry because your baseline has shifted. The nicer apartment, the premium subscriptions, the habitual coffee runs. This isn't growth, it's hedonic adaptation, a treadmill where satisfaction stays just out of reach. The Stoic antidote: periodic voluntary discomfort. Not self-punishment, but intentional simplicity. A month without dining out, a weekend with your phone on airplane mode, wearing clothes until they're truly worn rather than merely last season. These exercises aren't about frugality, they're about rediscovering that your needs are smaller than your habits suggest. Here's the audit challenge. Grab your last 3 bank statements and a highlighter. Mark every expense in 3 colors: survival housing, utilities, nutritious food, growth books, courses, therapy, and illusion impulse buys, status symbols, subscriptions you forgot about. The goal isn't judgment, it's clarity. That gym membership you never use, it's not just wasting money, it's a reminder that your aspirations and actions are misaligned. The daily takeout, maybe it's not about convenience but avoiding the vulnerability of cooking badly. Stoicism doesn't demand austerity, it demands honesty. As Seneca wrote, it's not the man who has too little but the man who craves more that is poor. The deeper shift happens when you stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Does this serve my purpose?" A minimalist who buys a high-quality tool they'll use for decades is wiser than a miser who hoards cash but lives in constant scarcity mindset. Money, to the Stoic, is like a shovel, useful for digging, but worthless if you're not clear on what you're trying to build. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, slept on a simple cot and wore plain robes not because he hated comfort, but because he refused to let comfort become a prerequisite for peace. Try this reframe. Next time you're tempted by a purchase, pause and visualize losing it. That new car, picture it scratched by a reckless driver, the designer watch. Imagine it stolen. Does the thought spark rage or resignation? The intensity of your reaction measures your attachment. Epictetus advised, when you set your heart on something, don't just visualize getting it, visualize losing it. This isn't pessimism, it's emotional inoculation. The less your happiness depends on possessions, the more freely you can enjoy them without fear. Financial serenity isn't a number, it's a relationship. It's earning without obsession, spending without guilt, and losing without despair. The Stoics would argue that the richest person isn't the one with the most, but the one who's mastered the art of needing the least. So tonight, as you scroll past ads tailored to your insecurities, ask yourself, am I earning to live or living to earn? The answer might just redefine wealth altogether. Forgiveness in Stoicism isn't about excusing harm or pretending pain doesn't matter. It's about refusing to let someone else's actions continue to injure you long after the fact. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who faced betrayals and political backstabbing daily, scribbled this reminder in his journal: the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Think about that for a moment. He didn't say ignore the wound or seek payback. He said, don't let their behavior dictate yours. When you clutch a grudge, you're not punishing the other person. You're handing them the keys to your peace, letting them live rent-free in your mind. That's the Stoic twist. Forgiveness isn't surrender, it's eviction. Consider 2 co-workers after a heated disagreement. One replays the argument for weeks, drafting angry emails they'll never send, their productivity and mood corroded by resentment. The other acknowledges the hurt, then asks, does this person's opinion define me? Does ruminating on this serve my goals? The first approach chains you to the past, the second reclaims your agency. The Stoics didn't confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. You don't have to trust someone who broke your trust, but you do have to stop letting their actions break you over and over. As Seneca wrote to a friend nursing a grudge, anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Here's where victimhood and agency diverge. Holding onto resentment often masquerades as strength, a way of saying, I matter, my pain matters, but true strength lies in asking, how much longer will I let this matter? A parent who abandons you doesn't stop being absent because you're furious. A friend who betrays you doesn't feel the heat of your bitterness years later. The only person simmering in that emotional prison is you. Epictetus, who was beaten and crippled by his enslaver, taught that no one can harm you unless you permit it, not physically, but in the way you internalize their actions. That's the core of Stoic forgiveness, recognizing that your suffering isn't in the event itself, but in the story you keep telling about it. Try this exercise tonight. Write down one resentment you've carried, a betrayal, an unfair criticism, a childhood wound. Now, ask 3 Stoic questions. What part of this pain is still within my control to release? How has holding onto this weight served me? What would it feel like to set it down? You're not erasing what happened. You're refusing to let it dictate your present. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his private writings reveal a man constantly reminding himself, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. That's the alchemy, transforming grievances from anchors into lessons. The ultimate test, forgiving yourself. Stoicism isn't just about pardoning others, it's about releasing the grip of your own regrets. That mistake 5 years ago, that harsh word you can't take back, what does punishing yourself now repair? Seneca advised treating yourself as you would a misguided friend, with firmness but compassion. You've learned, now do better. No drama, no self-flagellation, just a quiet commitment to grow. So here's the challenge. Pick one resentment, just one, and perform a ritual of release. Write it on paper and burn it safely, or speak it aloud to the mirror, then say, I'm done carrying you, not because what happened was okay, but because you're no longer willing to pay the cost of holding on. As Marcus wrote, the cucumber is bitter, throw it away. There are brambles in your path, go around them. Nothing more is required. Forgiveness, in the end, isn't about them at all. It's about you choosing the lighter load. Joy in Stoicism isn't the flash of a smile or the rush of a thrill. It's something far deeper, something the Greeks called Eudemonia. This word doesn't translate neatly to happiness as we often think of it. It's closer to flourishing, a steady, unshakable sense of fulfillment that comes not from external rewards, but from living in alignment with your highest self. Imagine 2 types of fire. One is a sparkler, bright and crackling but gone in seconds. The other is a forge, relentless and enduring. Pleasure is the sparkler. Eudemonia is the forge. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, drew a razor-sharp distinction between these two. He wrote, "The happy life is one in harmony with its own nature." Notice what he didn't say. He didn't equate happiness with wealth, fame, or even comfort. Instead, he pointed to something internal, an integrity between who you are and how you live. Think of a musician lost in the flow of composing, or a nurse who finds purpose in the grueling demands of caregiving. Their joy isn't dependent on applause or convenience. It's rooted in the quiet certainty that they're acting from their core values. That's eudaimonia, the kind of joy that doesn't vanish when circumstances shift. Modern culture often confuses pleasure for happiness. A lavish vacation, a shopping spree, a viral social media post, these things deliver a dopamine hit, but like sugar, the rush fades fast. Contrast that with the satisfaction of keeping a promise to yourself, or the warmth of a conversation where you listen deeply instead of waiting to speak. The first leaves you craving more, the second nourishes something beyond the moment. Seneca warned, pleasure is a poor teacher of truth. It's fleeting, addictive, and often at odds with our long-term well-being. But joy grounded in virtue, that's a compass. Here's how to spot the difference in your own life. Recall a recent moment of pleasure, maybe a delicious meal or a winning bet. Now recall a moment of fulfillment, perhaps helping a stranger or finally finishing a project you believed in. The first feels good while it's happening. The second lingers, coloring your sense of who you are. The Stoics argued that chasing pleasure is like drinking salt water. It intensifies thirst, but cultivating virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance creates a wellspring. You're not just happy because of something, you're happy through something, through the act of living well. So where does this kind of joy hide in your daily routine? It's often disguised as effort, that workout you dread but feel proud after completing, the difficult conversation you initiate because it's right, not easy. Even the mundane acts, folding laundry with care, cooking a meal with attention, can become rituals of virtue if you bring intention to them. Seneca's letters overflow with examples: the farmer who finds dignity in tending his land, the teacher who thrives in the messy work of guiding young minds. Their joy isn't in the absence of struggle, but in the meaning they extract from it. Your challenge today is simple but profound. Identify one source of virtuous joy in your life, not what makes you giddy, but what makes you grow. Maybe it's the discipline of writing morning pages, even when inspiration is scarce, or the patience required to teach your child to tie their shoes, resisting the urge to take over. Whatever it is, name it. Then, in Seneca's spirit, ask yourself, how can I deepen this practice, not for praise or results, but for the quiet triumph of aligning action with character? That's the Stoic secret. Joy isn't something you find. It's something you build, one virtuous brick at a time. The Stoics didn't wait for chaos to strike before sharpening their minds. They built resilience through daily rituals, small hinges that swung big doors. Picture Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire, rising before dawn to light a lamp and fill his journal with reminders of virtue. Or Seneca, ending each evening dissecting his actions like a surgeon reviewing a day's operations. These weren't grand gestures, they were deliberate, repeatable practices designed to turn philosophy from theory into muscle memory. Your morning coffee scroll through news alerts. That's someone else's agenda hijacking your attention before you've even dressed. The Stoic alternative, a ritual of ownership claiming your mind before the world claims it. Start with the Premeditatio Malorum, the Stoic morning rehearsal of obstacles. Before checking your phone, sit upright. No need for meditation cushions, just clarity, and mentally walk through your day's challenges. Not to dread them, but to disarm them. Visualize the commute traffic, the critical client meeting, the potential conflict with your partner. Then ask, how might I meet these with wisdom rather than reactivity? This isn't negative thinking, it's emotional inoculation. Like a fire drill prepares you for flames, this practice prepares you for friction. Epictetus trained his students to whisper to themselves each morning, "Today I will meet interference, ingratitude, arrogance, but I also carry the tools to navigate them." That shift from victim to strategist happens in 5 quiet minutes. Evenings call for the examen, a Stoic review borrowed later by Ignatius of Loyola. Light a candle or step outside any signal to your brain that this is sacred time. Now ask 3 questions. Where did I act with courage today? Where did I let externals dictate my peace? What's one small way tomorrow could align more closely with my values? No guilt, no flattery, just forensic honesty. Seneca wrote letters dissecting his daily missteps, snapping at a servant, hesitating to speak truth to power. The goal wasn't self-flagellation, but course correction. Modern equivalent, a voice note to yourself or 2 bullet points in a notes app. The medium doesn't matter, the mirror does. Gratitude might seem like a buzzword now, but the Stoics practiced it with an edge. Marcus Aurelius didn't just list blessings, he confronted their fragility. This could be my last winter, he'd remind himself while admiring snowfall. Try this twilight ritual, hold an ordinary object, a spoon, a shoe, and trace its journey to your hands. The miner who extracted the metal, the designer who drafted its curves, the trucker who delivered it. Suddenly, the mundane becomes a web of interdependence. Gratitude, Stoic style, isn't just feeling thankful. It's recognizing how much you don't control, yet receive anyway. Your 7-day starter challenge. Mornings, 2 minutes of premeditatio. Visualize one potential friction point and your Stoic response. No journal required. Think it through while brushing your teeth. Evenings, the triad review. 1 victory, 1 lapse, 1 intention spoken aloud to your bathroom mirror. Consistency beats grandeur. Miss a day, no drama. The Stoics weren't monks, they were statesmen, parents, soldiers. Seneca admitted skipping his evening review for weeks during political crises. What mattered was returning, not perfection. The magic lies in repetition. Flossing 1 tooth doesn't prevent cavities, doing it daily does. Similarly, these rituals compound. That morning mental rehearsal. Soon you'll catch yourself pausing mid-argument, remembering your pre-scripted calm. The evening examen, you'll start spotting reactive patterns, how every Tuesday meeting triggers defensiveness, or how hunger morphs into irritability. Awareness, layered day upon day, becomes autonomy. Tools are optional but powerful. A physical coin in your pocket to flip when deciding between virtue and convenience. A recurring calendar alert. What's within my control right now? Even a single post-it on your laptop. Is this necessary? The Stoics used slaves to whisper Memento Mori in generals' ears during triumphs. We need reminders too, just less macabre. The deeper payoff. Rituals transform philosophy from something you think about to something you live by. Reading Epictetus inspires. Morning premeditatio embeds his lessons in your synapses. You'll still feel anger, fear, envy, but now there's a speed bump between impulse and action. That pause, cultivated daily, is where the Stoic awakens. So tonight, as you power down your devices, ask not just what did I do today, but who did I become? Then tomorrow, rise and begin again. The path from chaos to calm isn't a single leap, it's these small, steady steps repeated until they're reflex. That's how marble is carved, not with one hammer blow, but with countless deliberate taps. We've traveled far together, from the storm of unchecked emotions to the steady ground of Stoic clarity. Remember, this isn't about becoming unfeeling or invincible. It's about reclaiming the space between what happens and how you respond. The dichotomy of control isn't just a mental exercise, it's a lifeline. When frustration bubbles up because the world refuses to bend to your will, that's your cue to ask, is this mine to change? If not, your energy belongs elsewhere. Negative visualization isn't morbid, it's liberating. By rehearsing loss, you uncover the hidden gifts in your ordinary moments. The warmth of a morning coffee, the sound of a loved one's laugh, the privilege of breathing without pain. These practices aren't ancient relics, they're tools for modern survival. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned personal suffering into timeless wisdom, put it perfectly. No man is free who is not master of himself. That mastery isn't found in grand gestures, but in daily discipline. It's pausing before reacting. It's questioning your judgments. It's remembering that your power lies not in controlling life's waves, but in learning to surf them. So where do you start? Don't overhaul your life overnight. Pick one Stoic tool, maybe the morning premeditation of obstacles or the evening examen of your actions. Carry it like a compass this week. Notice how it shifts your focus from chaos to choice. This journey doesn't end here. If these ideas resonated with you, join our growing community of modern Stoics. Hit subscribe and let's keep exploring how ancient wisdom can light our path through today's noise. Your calm power isn't a destination, it's a practice. And every practice begins with a single step. Take yours.